I keep reading that the world is catching up to Canada,
Hmm.
and that verb tense has got to change. The world caught up quite a while ago.
Curling now enters the Sports Weekend spotlight.
It was compelling, it was riveting, it was gut-wrenching, and it was exhausting, wasn't it, Joanne?
I need some self-care, so sorry to interrupt the show, guys, but that's where we're at. What a freaking 24 hours, hey, for Team Canada.
Why don't we start right there, Joe? You've been at the games. You've been in this exact position. Some reflection.
Yeah, for one thing, I'm very proud of both the teams. They admit that they had games where they weren't at their best, where they weren't exactly where they wanted to be, but they fought so hard until the end. Particularly Brad Gushu's team, like having those 2 losses leading into the semifinal, the way that they came out was just outstanding. And it was such a good game and so close right down to the last rock that they have so much to be proud of, as does Jennifer Jones. They played great against Denmark after a really tough loss against China. Would have been able to to throw in the towel there. So just that resilience and how hard they tried. And then on top of that, just the openness post game, like to see that emotion out of Brad Gushu, who like often I don't even know if he has a pulse out there. So to open up like that, to be vulnerable, to say how he's feeling, sharing that with Canada, just absolutely commend him for that. And I think the only emotion we can feel is pride. And as you mentioned, let's look at the system. Let's look at what we can do better and try to give our athletes the best chance to succeed when they're on that stage. But as far as the athletes themselves go, I chills. They're just phenomenal teams, and I couldn't be happier with them.
Bruce, you were having to narrate all of this. What was that experience like for you?
You know, Devin, as we were doing that today, my mind was kind of drifting off to kids watching this across the country. And I was thinking, what does sport teach us? And I think 2 of the big things are you win with humility, but you lose with grace. And I thought back to Colleen in 2003 in Winnipeg, where I was ringside, and she lost just a crasher to the U.S. after going undefeated all week. And the first thing she did when she lost was come over and do an interview with me with tears in her eyes. Thought of Kevin Martin in 2009 when he threw that thing through the rings and the world collapsed on him. And the next week he was there to do an interview. And today, imagine yourself with just devastation around you. You've trained for this forever. You've quarantined from family. You've put your heart, your soul into it. You lose. And one of the first things you do is go talk to the country. Right? You win with humility, you lose with grace. And I think if you were a young kid in Canada watching this today, you, by symbiosis, learned a tremendous amount about what sport is through Team Gushu and Team Jones. That's how you do it. They would have rather won, there's no question, but they lost with phenomenal grace. And they don't need me to be proud of them, but I'm proud of them.
Ooh, Bruce.
Well said.
And Mike.
What he said. I'll go with what he said. Yeah, I mean, I every top level curler, Colleen, myself, Joanne, Brad, and Jennifer, you know, we've lost big games, and it's a privilege to be on that stage. We talk about it all the time, how you work so hard because you want the opportunity, you want to be there, and there's no lack of effort, there's no lack of desire, there's no lack of pride, there's no stone left unturned, pardon the pun, for any of these athletes. They did everything they could do to be ready for the moment. And yes, there's no crowd, yes, there's no, you know, but they're not unique in that. I mean, every team at the Olympics has gone through that. So, you know, what it comes down to is you know, the quality of the character. You know, we saw a lot of that from as Bruce mentioned, you know, to be able to go do that interview. I've done that interview after we lost the gold medal game. It's no fun, but you have to live with yourself. The nice thing about curlers is for the most part, it's not all we do, you know, and you got 2 skips in Brad and Jen who have tons of experience. Luckily, both of them have won this before. So they kind of can appreciate, what the history and what's going on with the teams that are moving on. But I feel just as like everyone else does. It's a tough interview to do, but there's no criticism. There's no anything from our standpoint. And it's sport. That's kind of the bottom line. And let's not forget the teams that are in the playoffs, the teams that did win. They're phenomenal teams. They're phenomenal teams. You've got the Olympic champion, the two-time defending world champion in the women's side, the European champion, and the Asia Pacific champion. That's who made the playoffs. And then you've got three-time defending world champion in the final, taking on the best team on the planet right now. So, we came into these games with Gushu. It was 1A, 1B, 1C with Adine, Mowat, and Gushu. And you knew you had to go through that gauntlet if you wanted to win. And unfortunately, you got to play the game on the ice. But yeah, and full credit to both teams. All three teams, our mixed doubles team as well. They just did so well and played well. It's just not well enough this week. Unfortunately, that's kind of what happened. But
let's talk about
love watching them.
Let's talk about the last stone draw and what needs to happen in that going forward, Joanne, because while Gushu was able to lose with the brick in his hand, for Jennifer Jones, it was the mathematical equation and just having a lousy week of draw to the button. How much tougher is it to go down that way?
Yeah, that's got to hurt. I mean, we watched them on the screen waiting for the permutations to play out. And I can't imagine how that would have felt for them. Having something that you feel like draw for hammer is a little bit more controllable than the game. Like you've got your pregame practice. Everyone's great drawers, great sweepers. That feels like something that we should be good at. And to have that not be there all week, like that's gotta really sting. So I think we need to make sure, like I think you mentioned, Colleen, that's part of our own championships now. Like we need to make sure that this is a big deal. And I don't know if we started gripping it too tight, like if the players out there were just, I watched the pregame practices, like I can see it from the booth and you see the player go T-line, and then it's time for draw for hammer and then it's way off. And so is that just a matter of, is it a mental thing? Is it just gripping it a little tight? Are we not warming up the path properly? Like there's probably stuff to look at individually for each team. But certainly something that's extremely important. It's like you said, it's a win if you're in that three-way tie.
Right.
But Mike, do we have to throw away our tiebreakers we do in Canada? I know that's sacrilegious to say out loud.
Not really. To me, it's not.
Players see the enormity of
it's
last stone
right.
draw and create a pressure situation every time you make it, rather than, we've got hammer in the first end, we've won the game.
If you look at the Brier and the Scotties as a goal to prepare yourself best for the Olympics or World Championship, you need to run at the same format. I think that's pretty simple. And that includes, throwing both draws and, measuring everything the same way that they do at the World Championships or the Olympic Games. I'm not as big a naysayer about the draw to the button total, to be honest. The teams all know it's there. And I said, if you just ask Brad Gushu to fall out of bed and draw the button, he's going to be pretty good at it. Jennifer Jones, same thing. So what's the difference? Maybe it's just a bad week. I don't know. The other thing to remember, like I said, they're playing against phenomenal athletes and they're playing this really, really good team. So I understand why the World Curling Federation does it, but I'm not that big against draw to the button. If I'm being honest about it, it really sucks. But Jennifer Jones had a shot to beat Sweden. She lost that tough one against China. Brad Gushu even mentioned in your interview, Colleen, we didn't do enough during the week to get the hammer in the round in the playoffs.
Yep.
And Nick Adine did exactly what Brad Gushu did to Brad Jacobs in the trials final. Brad Gushu had the hammer in the first end of the trials final and played almost a perfect game and was one up coming home or two up coming home, and that was enough. So, those round robin games are just massively important, and any little blips, don't think that Jennifer Jones or Brad Gushu, when they lost, when Brad lost to Nick Adine in the round robin, he knew that was massive for the hammer.
Right.
When Jen lost to China, that was a tough one to watch. She knew that had really bad implications for her playoff chances. So it's just one of those things where, like I said, the teams are also good. You can't take an end off. You can't take a draw to the button scenario off. And if the margins are so thin right now, it's just really tough at the top.
Surely, Bruce, Mike and Joe, there needs to be a conversation, though, perhaps about some changes. Does there not, about preparing Canadian teams for the Olympics? Bruce?
Yeah. Devin, this is an interesting one. I keep reading that the world is catching up to Canada. And that verb tense has got to change. The world caught up quite a while ago.
Right.
There are just really, really good teams. And I don't think there's going to be front page stories in the next couple of days. What's wrong with curling in Canada? I don't know if anything's wrong. The world's just gotten really good, and there is no shame at all in losing to these teams. And so I go to Joanne on this. She's actually played it. But from my perspective from afar, we're going to see these articles in the Globe and in the National. What's wrong with it? There's nothing wrong. The world's just really good at it.
But Joe, can we do more to set Canadian curlers up for success?
Yeah, I think we can. I think that our trial system isn't good enough. I think we don't give our teams enough time to prepare. Anna Hasselborg, Tirinzoni, they had 9 months to prepare. They knew in April or May of last year, I believe it was May, that they were going to go to the Olympics. So they had the opportunity to celebrate that, which is a huge accomplishment. And then they had the opportunity to train through and plan and peak once. We're asking our athletes to peak in December. We're asking some athletes to peak in order to qualify for the trials. And I don't think that's reasonable. I think it's not realistic to have someone like they move the trials back 2 weeks. Oh, great. Okay, so now you have 2 months to prepare for the biggest championship of your life versus other teams that have known they were going for 9 months, if not more than that. I just don't think it's reasonable. And like, it's 2 Olympics now where we've had our teams go and they're not going to be super thrilled with their performances. Yes, the world is amazing. Yes, there's the margins for error is so small, but like Brad Gushue himself said that they didn't play well enough. And I haven't seen Brad Gushue or the whole team struggle like that they did in a few games like they did there. And sure, the ice was tricky, but we've had tricky conditions lots. I mean, we're curlers. We see it all the time. And that wasn't the team that I knew in some of those games. They played great in the semi, like, don't get me wrong, and credit to them for full effort. But I just think we're putting everyone through the ringer. You win the trials and then your life blows up and it's just this crazy whirlwind. And then you get to the Olympics and then you're on the roller coaster. And I just don't think that it's good enough.
And a footnote or whatever, an add-on. What I would like to see an investment in sport, in our sport, is the money in kids, and not just for more coaches or something, but just we need to find the Bruce Mowat team, that youth. Brad Gushue won his first Olympic gold. How old was he? 20. Bruce, you'll remember
25.
that.
25.
Yeah. Where is our 25-year-old superstar right now? And so the way our money goes, all of the great athletes who get the Sport Canada funding, and that's well deserved, they're also heavily supported through massive sponsorship. And the under 25s can't get there from here. And that's, I think, where Curling Canada has to raise the bar of finding within the regions 4 great athletes who are also good curlers, because you can make them into that. And if you take that kind of model and spend a couple of years doing it, because right now the age level of our curlers, and they're so talented, but it's I don't know if you average it out, probably 40-ish. When you look at Cooey and Jacobs, and not maybe so much as at the women's level, and Gushue, there needs to be an investment of and support for the younger athletes. And I don't see them on the horizon. Is it just Matt Dunstone and Colton Lott is at that 20? I'm talking the 25-year group.
Mike?
Well, I think that's the big takeaway is I think the dates of the trials are going to change. I think the players have been calling for it for a few years now, and this will make it happen. I hate to say it, but this is going to make it the change. If it doesn't, shame on Curling Canada, as far as I'm concerned. They need to appoint their teams far sooner, give them every chance to prepare. And it's not just the peaking, just to give people an idea, when we won the trials in whatever it was, November, I went from doing very few media obligations to doing an interview, almost an interview a day leading into the game. So that cuts into everything, your life, your practice, your prep, all of this sort of stuff. So like you said, like Joanne said, if you can know 9 months in advance, you celebrate it then. You get all your ducks in a row, you get ready to go, you have your media days, then you can just plan your entire schedule once the curling season begins in mid-September or whenever you want to start to peak towards February. And there's not that pressure, as you said, peaking once to get in the trials, peaking at the trials, and then trying to peak at the games. It's just a lot.
Mike, maybe that interview you did every day was really your true destiny. We're not Olympic gold, but this career as a broadcaster.
I've milked the medal pretty well, Colleen. I'm not going to lie. It's been good.
That was your training, man.
Guys, we've got to get to Jennifer Jones because I know.
Give Jen a big hug for us.